Alright folks, today we're going to be talking about something that has been on the internet circulating around online and it's causing quite a stir. World War III. Now, we're not going to jump into any type of speculation. I'm going off of just what is effectively open source material that you can find just doing Google searches, watching different network news, that sort of thing. But the indicators that are there could potentially lead us down that dangerous path towards nuclear war. This is the Urban Sentinel, and let's get into it. Now, forgive me, I'm going to be reading off my notes, so I'm going to be between here and there to make sure that I get everything covered. Alright, so indicator number 1, military buildup. If we witness a significant increase in military forces and hardware near sensitive borders or international waterways, tensions may be on the level to escalate rapidly. As an example, if America were to station troops and advanced weaponry along Russia's shared border with Finland, then that could trigger a defensive response from Russia, potentially leading to an armed conflict and an increased threat of a nuclear exchange between Russia, the United States, and NATO as a whole. Indicator number 2, heightened rhetoric. Basically talking the talk and possibly being prepared to walk the walk. Political leaders engage in aggressive rhetoric or making brazen statements regarding their nuclear capabilities, the strength of their forces, and their determination to win at all costs. Alarm bells start going off when world leaders start talking that sort of, shall we say, nonsense. Now imagine if Russia were to publicly declare its intent to use nuclear weapons against any perceived threats. I'm just saying. To its sovereignty, the provocative statements could escalate tensions and force other countries to react in an effort to safeguard their own interests. Now, we'll touch back on that because I'm sure many of you, have already keyed up on those words. Indicator number 3, violation of international agreements. If a country chooses to disregard previously established treaties or disarmament agreements or anything that on a global scale has been acknowledged as being this is not the behavior that you should engage in, that could also mark a crucial turning point. It basically says that that individual country is at its point where it's not going to take the consideration of others first. It's now focused on its own protection, its own development, its own existence. Taking, again, another hypothetical situation, let's say China pushes forward with testing new nuclear devices, making better nuclear devices, allowing it to expand its nuclear arsenal. That breach could trigger a chain reaction and a response by other nations, the United States being one of them, to move forward. It could also trigger other nations such as India and Pakistan to increase their arsenals as well and develop new weapons of war with that nuclear material. An arms race, again, as we once saw back in the 50s and the 60s, starts all over again with newer, higher levels of technology and destruction. A fourth indicator, weakened diplomatic ties. Pure plain simple, people aren't talking to each other. The diplomats and other world leaders, whether it be in large-scale forums and meetings and summits like the NATO summit, or whether it be in individual conversations that occur over international lines. When countries start cutting back on negotiations, refusing to either meet with certain diplomats or certain countries, or even hear what certain ideas are being brought up and put on the table, that in combination with basically telling their non-essential staff to, hey, bring it on home, or leave this country and go to another area instead, when they officially or formally tell their diplomats, pack your bags and get out of there, that also is another indicator that things could be going south. So if you had countries such as Russia or China suddenly do that with all of their diplomats and all of their other envoys, you'll start to see them separate from certain countries and maybe migrate to other countries. And then perhaps other countries such as Iran, India, Pakistan, they also start to follow suit in relatively quick successive order. The breakdown in communications is what will greatly diminish the chances of a peaceful resolution, because simply put, if people aren't going to talk, if they're not going to listen, it's going to be hard to get a feel and an idea of what another nation or nation's leaders are thinking. We can always speculate, and speculation is what every person does. You, me, people in pay grades way above us. We all speculate, but until we know for a fact and we can verify that this is what they're planning on doing, it's just a guess. Another indicator, fifth one, instability, and regional hotspots. And this one is kind of broad, as some of the other ones are, but it ties everything together. Regional conflicts can quickly spiral out of control, dragging major powers into deadly confrontation. Now, with that, again, I'm going to throw out a couple of countries, and you just, keep it in your mind. You think about Syria, Afghanistan, Niger, Israel, South Sudan, France, Greece, Myanmar, Haiti. All those countries have all had certain levels, and some still continue to have certain levels of civil unrest and internal conflicts between the governments and the civilian population, between different factions of the governments, as well as either neighboring countries or countries that have a greater effect on their existence or trade or things like that. But with that being said, a lot of it is usually internal first, and it's caused by various things. It could be the economic situation, it might be government corruption, it could be political discourse, it could be a disruption in services to the citizens and the population. It might be failures in the infrastructure, whether it's road and rail, communications, whatever it is. All of those things start building up in the terms of a polycrisis. That's what it becomes. You have small incidents after small incidents where nothing's resolved or fixed, and then another layer gets put on top of it. And countries that I've listed aren't the only ones. There are a lot more, but even here within the United States, we've seen what happens when you have just the right balance. When you flip a few of the right switches, you get civil unrest, you get an unstable economy, you have political disputes going on, you get mass protests, and then you get riots, and everything quickly evolves into this untamed creature sort of roaming across the land where you're never quite sure where it's going to land next. All those things within a region can then ripple out and affect other areas, other countries, even large geographic areas around it. And depending upon who has their finger on what type of button makes a determination on how the next step may go. So with that being said, those 5 indicators, and again, those are not the only 5. There's a lot of different things that can go on. A pathway taken this way versus this way can change things incredibly fast and on a large dynamic level. But with military buildup, heightened rhetoric, violations of international agreements, weakened diplomatic ties, instabilities within regions and hotspots throughout the world, those are serving as warning signs for a potential outbreak of a nuclear war. Now, as I said before, many of these things that I listed are currently going on. Many of these actions that I listed have happened, but if you pay attention, they haven't happened in conclusion. They're not done. They're still ongoing. And with that, you have to start to think about it's more on the case of a boiling pot of water. The water is boiling and it's boiling and it's bubbling up and it's bubbling up, but at a certain point, it's going to spill over. That's where we're at. We're still water in the pot, it's still boiling, but we haven't quite reached that stage where it's now going to boil over. So let me know what you think. Leave a comment. I'd like to hear what other ideas you guys have. I'm trying to get a feel for how certain things are. I'm just basing this off of things that I see, things that I perceive. I may be completely off on it. I may be looking through a very narrow scope. So hearing from other people, that will definitely help, and it'll give us a broader sense of where we see things are regionally within our own areas or on a larger international scale. Everything that is currently going on is on a long-term course. It's going to be going on for a while. This is not going to wrap up neatly like a TV series at the end of the season, and then you start the next season brand new with a previously on. This is just going to keep going and keep going and keep going. So we have to kind of be aware of where everything is going to be headed. And granted, we're not steering the bus on this at all. We are stuck on it, and that's just the way it is. Like it or not, ding ding, you can try to pull that bell all you want, you can't get off. So we have to just simply pay attention to what's going on, what we're passing, which way the route is going, to get an idea of where the next potential stop could be. And remember, being prepared does not mean that you are prepared for anything and everything and will survive everything that's thrown at you. It just simply means that you will be more capable of handling situations than someone who isn't prepared. All right, like, share, subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next one.